just about to say it's slowing down coming into the room, so we are going to be cognizant of everyone's time and go ahead and get started. Joining us today, again, my name is Rebecca Rowe. I'm the Associate Director of the Community Revitalization Office at Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. I will be one of your presenters as well as one of your facilitators today. Your other presenter will be Joy Rumley. Do you want to introduce yourself, Joy?
Hi, I'm Joy Rumley. I'm a program manager with the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development and the Virginia Main Street Program, the Industrial Revitalization Fund, Enterprise Zone Program, and Port Host programs are programs that I work with. So you'll get to hear about one of our new funds today.
So today we are talking about the Virginia Statewide Business District Resurgence, and this is a one-time allocation from the state to the Community Revitalization Office for fiscal year 2022. Next slide. At DHCD, we are committed to creating safe, affordable, and prosperous communities to live, work, and do business in Virginia. So the overview of the Business District Resurgence Grant. This grant fund seeks to advance and accelerate the post-pandemic recovery of Virginia's business and commercial districts. So I will emphasize that again, business and commercial districts. So not individual businesses that apply for these funds will be nonprofits who are supporting the business districts in their purview. Specifically, the historically economically disadvantaged communities and other business districts that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Through expanding organizational and business support grants, funding is envisioned to provide a more inclusive framework for community-driven, comprehensive revitalization and vitality. So again, we've already gotten some questions about if this is a child care organization. That would not be a nonprofit that is eligible for these funds because, again, of this focus on business and commercial districts. And just to continue to reiterate this point, this is not a fund that is available direct to businesses. So we will continue to discuss that point as we move through the presentation. Next slide. The objectives of this program are, again, to serve historically economically disadvantaged communities, such as small, women-owned, minority-owned, and immigrant-owned businesses, again, within a targeted business district. To provide technical assistance and training opportunities for entrepreneurs and small business owners. To provide consultant services, technical assistance, and training opportunities for commercial and mixed-use building owners, including small-scale real estate developers. And to support capacity building to create and strengthen local networks and organizations supporting community and economic development in targeted business districts. And e-commerce opportunities for micro, small, and sole proprietorship businesses that are producing, creating, and making products in Virginia. Next slide. Applicants. Local governments, including recognized tribal governments, economic development organizations, Main Street organizations, regional economic development entities or PDCs, chambers of commerce, and again, nonprofits who have a mission or focus that is related to the priorities for this fund. And all applicants must demonstrate the capacity to manage, implement, and complete the projects in a timely manner. Next slide. So our available funding, we have $1 million in this funding pool and 2 grant options. The first is for organizational capacity building, and those grants are up to $50,000, as well as business support grants that are a maximum of $100,000. And one entity can apply for both of those opportunities for a combined maximum of $150,000. The match requirement is 5 to 1, so that would be $5 of state funds to $1 of local leverage. And eligible sources of matching funds, again, are cash. That can be public, private, local, state, or federal funds, in-kind goods and services, and volunteer hours. And we use the IRS wage rate of, I believe it's around $28 an hour to calculate the value of volunteer hours. I'll go back up to the cash aspect of that as well. So this is a very flexible pot of funds in terms of being funds. So if you are an entity that has CDBG funds or Go Virginia funds, we will allow you to use our program. However, in not all cases can our funds be used to match those programs. So you'll need to confirm with those programs whether or not these funds count as a match for them. I'm going to pause here. Any questions on the match? May ARPA be used for a match? Yes. Would this apply to farmers markets? Potentially. If you have farmers markets that are a nonprofit organization and they focus on small businesses, on makers, they maybe wanted to do an e-commerce platform, all of the vendors for the farmers market and so on, that could potentially be a project. If you have questions about what would make a good project or what kind of information you need to submit to us, we will have staff contact information at the end, and I would definitely encourage you to reach out to staff, and we're happy to help you develop a program proposal. Oh, there was just one. Let me go back up. Organizations that distribute funds to others. Correct. Frank K asked, can you quantify those terms, please? I'm sorry, I'm not certain which terms you needed quantified, so please feel free to put that in the chat box and we will get that information to you. Can the organizational capacity help fund a Main Street director to administer business support programs? We do not generally fund ongoing operations with these kinds of state funds.
Becca, we'll get into some of those types of eligible type activities in the next slide if you're ready, if you want to move on to that now that the question has come up.
Yeah, yes, please. So we are going to answer a lot of these questions in the presentation. So when I do stop to answer some questions, we'll stick with the ones that have to do with what has just been, I just lost all my words. The topic we've just been covering. Okay, so organizational capacity building grants. Again, these are up to 50 example activities. This could be strategic planning for the organization. It could be master the community or the district that is the focus of the grant funds. Municipal matching grant programs with business support outcomes. So if you having some of this kind of capacity building work with local funds, you can expand that work by pairing it with these funds. Community initiated development planning, entrepreneurial ecosystem programs, market studies, and prospectus development for the community and other innovative organizational capacity building or technical assistance projects. So we added that last bullet point because we don't know all of the potential activities that may fall under organizational capacity building. So again, if you have questions, if you want to innovate, let us know and we'll talk about it. Next slide. Monetary percentage of the match that needs to be $2. I think we're going to get to that in a bit, or Joy can address that. Business support grants of up to 100,000. Example activities there: small business and entrepreneurial support, some SWAM business support projects, potentially community e-commerce platforms. We've definitely seen over the last year how important it is to be able to incorporate the bricks and the clicks for small businesses. Yes, I stole that from you, Harrisonburg. Small scale production, manufacturing business support, and setting up internal small business systems. So if you as the PDC or a Main Street organization wanted to provide assistance to your small businesses to help them with legal matters that they need taken care of, accounting, marketing, social media, e-commerce, again, so those kinds of small business support programs. Business retention and expansion strategies. Marketing campaigns in support of local businesses, building and real estate improvement. That might include feasibility studies, facade renderings, floor plan development, making in support of local businesses. So we are really unlikely to fund any kind of mural projects with this money, but if you had a placemaking project that was building kind of an outdoor food hall with seating that would support the restaurants in your district, that is a placemaking project that is very clearly in support of the small businesses, as a placemaking project that we could look at. Again, if you have any questions on these details, we as staff can help you work through potential projects. And up to 10% of the grant award can be used for grant administration. Next slide. Outcomes, you need to be able to focus on one or more of these outcomes. Businesses created, or they may be businesses served or businesses improved. Jobs created or retained, programs developed or implemented. Organizations served or improved, participants, buildings, e-commerce platforms created, plans developed, or even better than developing a plan is implementing a plan. That's what they're there for. Leveraged private investment, and again, others as is that you are proposing. Next slide. And Joy, as we're getting more into the application details, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, so we're going to jump into some of the actual application elements. So as we score these applications, we're going to be considering some of these criteria, and we'll get into some of the questions that address this criteria. So does the project target our program objectives, which Rebecca reviewed at the very beginning? That's worth 40 points of the application. What are the project's potential impacts and outcomes? We just reviewed those outcome metrics. That will be 30% of the application score. The organizational capacity and readiness, we're going to have questions for you around your project team, those that are involved, how well you've implemented and carried out projects in the past. That's 20% of your score. And having all of your match funds in place. Remember, Rebecca had said that is 5 to 1. So if you have all of your $1 in place, that would be an additional 10% of the scoring criteria. So what does the timeline look like? At the Department of Housing and Community Development, we have a centralized application management system, fondly referred to as CAMS. If you or your organization are not registered in CAMS, you need to do that as soon as possible. We'll have some information on that in just a few slides. Our applications actually are open now, open today. The application deadline will be July 30th. And that will close at midnight. However, support will not be available after 5 p.m. So please do not hesitate. Go ahead and get your information into the application. We'll be reviewing applications throughout August and hopefully to have an announcement by the governor on awardees in September. We'll be then issuing contracts throughout October, and your project would then be able to begin in November, with the conclusion of those projects being around the time frame of June 2022. So within this fiscal year. So we're going to go over some of the key application elements. This is the nuts and bolts of the application. We're going to go through each question and each element so that you know what to expect when you are applying. We're going to ask some questions around your project information, contact information, location of the project, the information around your budget and leverage funds, where those are coming from and how the funding will be used, as well as a description of your project. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? And then the attachments that we expect to be part of the application. So the project description. So here are the actual questions that you will find in the CAM system. To provide a detailed description of the proposed project, what specific activities will be undertaken with this funding. So we want to hear a little bit about what are you going to do with this funds? Are you developing a business support system, as Rebecca mentioned, that will help support those small businesses with their legal services and accounting and social media? How will that look? What will you do with that? How will those funds be used, and what activities are you proposing or undertaking? If it's a planning project, strategic planning, or otherwise master planning type projects, describe to us what those activities will undertake and how you will undertake those. How does this project further the fund's objectives? We're going to go back to those objectives that Rebecca mentioned. How does it address those communities and business districts that have been adversely impacted by the pandemic and historically underserved? We'll have questions in there about that. Where will this project take place? So we want to know a little bit of background on your business district, the commercial district, the geographic footprint of the project. Tell us a little bit about that and what makes up that place. How and when will the proposed project be accomplished? So with this question, we really are interested in who's doing what and by when, and how will that be undertaken? And that leads into the next question about who will be working on this project. If it is a municipality, what partners do you also have involved? What consultants might you need to bring on as part of the project? If you're a nonprofit organization, who within your staff will be working on the project? Will you need other partners? Who are those other partners? Will you need a consultant? Who would that consultant be? So share with us all of that information. Last but not least, the expected outcomes from this project, both quantitative and qualitative. So in this previous slide, we talked a lot about the outcomes and those metrics. Those are very quantitative. Tell us the number of businesses that you are assisting, the number of strategic plans that you are developing, the number of communities that you are supporting, but also tell us a little bit of that qualitative data as well. Some of those things that aren't numerical necessarily, but we do want you to embellish on those as part of the application. We do require a few attachments. One of those attachments is to tell us a little bit about your project team. I mentioned that in the previous slide, to tell us who is going to be working on the project. So we want a little bit of information about them, a little mini bio or brief resume on those folks that are going to be working on your project. That helps us to evaluate capacity and your ability to complete the project on time and in budget. Project work plan. We do provide this as part of a template with the application instruction documents, but basically it is what task needs to be done, who is going to be taking on that task, by when will it be completed, so that we can see that you've thought through the entire project and you've timed it out, who's going to be working on these elements, how much time will each element take, and ensure a timely completion of the project. Here's an example of that. Very simple, but it does show us that you've thought through the entire project from the start date to the end date, and that things will be done in time. Continuing on, we do ask for some information around your budget, the match documentation that you have. Again, that is 5 to 1. So for every $5 that we have, we will expect you to document $1 of your funding. So that, as Rebecca mentioned, can be cash or in kind. The in kind can be either donated services or it can be volunteer time. So with the cash or in kind, we do not have a prescriptive percentage. It is just 5 to 1. So whatever percentage that $1 makes up, please submit that documentation to us. So we do want to know about your overall budget. So our dollars plus your dollars, total project cost, total budget, and that with all of that, you have considered the other funding that you need and that you have all of that secured. If it is an element that requires a cost estimate, say it's for consultant services or third-party services such as professional services like legal or architectural services, that you do have some quote or estimate providing backup of how you arrived at that number. If you have other funds that you are bringing to the project or in-kind services, for example, if a community or municipality is donating the cost of renting a space, that they have written a letter that says we are donating it at this value for this number of times for a total value of, you know, XYZ. If it's volunteer hours, if there is some calculation that you have done for the number of hours you believe would be required to implement that portion of the project, or if it's other cash from other grants or private sources that you have a letter where they have committed to matching this as part of the project. Maps and photographs help us a lot, especially if we're not as familiar with your community, or maybe even if we are very familiar with your community, but to orient us a little bit around that business or commercial district you're trying to target. Show us where that district is in relation to the larger community, within the larger region, within the state, so that we can get a really good handle on the area that you're targeting. If you're proposing, for example, a placemaking project, we want photographs of what that place looks like now with renderings of what it could look like after the project is finished. Just any information visually that could help us evaluate the project. And then we've left several slots open in the application system for you to upload attachments that maybe we hadn't thought of. Maybe you have a current strategic plan that you've developed and you wanted to share that with us and show us that this project is implementing a lot of those strategies, and that would be a document that would support your application. Anything that you think would be helpful for us to evaluate the project can be added as an additional attachment. So I mentioned our centralized application management system, and we're going to walk through some of these elements I just described in CAM so you can see a picture and an image of what that actually looks like. So you're going to go to DHCD's website, dhcd.virginia.gov, and at the very top, you're going to see that red circle. You're going to see Access CAM, so you're going to click on that. If you have not registered, if your organization has not registered with CAMS, you're going to click on that registration button and complete all of the documents that are requested to be registered. You can find how to do all of that in the user guide. It is updated and very well laid out to show you exactly those steps, the information that you need before you register, and any questions you might have as you're working through that system. But you're going to log on, and once you get registered, you can log on. And you're going to click on the apply button, and that's going to drop down a menu of all eligible funding opportunities within DHCD. And as you can see, under the Virginia Main Street Program 2022, you will see the Virginia Statewide Business District Resurgence Grant 2022. That is the button that you will want to click on, the program that you will want to click on in order to apply for these funds. Once you get your project started, this is what your application will look like. You're going to want to complete the project information tab with who is the primary point of contact, the area that you serve, just some contact information, and some project location information. The next tab is your project budget tab. So you're going to enter your total request, as Rebecca mentioned earlier, for organizational capacity grants. That total requested would be $50,000. For business support services, that is $100,000. Or if you are looking to do a combined total where you would be doing some organizational capacity building, but also some business support services, your total request would be up to $150,000. As you look at this budget, we have pre-populated some of those costs and activity categories, but you can also add other categories that maybe we had not already pre-populated. You can click on the plus sign. You'll see that on the far left side of your screen. That will allow you to go in and add specific dollar amounts under the DHCD portion as well as the other funding. So your other funding would be that match requirement. 5 to 1 is required, but if you have other dollars, or maybe our funding is a minority of the funding and you have a lot of other funding already available to you to match because it's an ongoing program, or you want to expand an ongoing program in some way, please capture that other funding in the other funding category tag. And then also, don't forget, there is a budget narrative at the very bottom where you can type out and give us a description of what the budget is about. So, for example, you may say that a portion of the funding is going towards capacity building, and that is matched with funding from, whatever source that is. You're also going to undertake some micro enterprise assistance in the amount of this amount of our funding with leveraged amounts from others. So just tell us a little bit more about your budget, but feel free to use that section there to verbalize what is the numbers tell. Then the narrative information, we went over the questions before. They're also within like I said, our grant guidelines. The full document is on our webpage. But each one of these questions you can type into. I have a couple of little tips and tricks here that I want to pause and just mention. The CAN system doesn't like extra formatting and a lot of frills and bells and whistles. It likes very simple, basic formatting. So if you're typing or copy and pasting from another document, you want to be sure to paste as basic text, or even copy the text in something like Notepad that really strips out a lot of that formatting, especially if you're copying something from a web page or a strategic planning document, something that may have a lot of formatting behind the scenes. So be sure to do that. And also after each question, you're going to want to save this tab. Click on Save This Tab. Save frequently, because at some point the system does time out. So if you are working on the application, you walk away for some time and try to come back to it, there's a chance that your work may be lost. So don't do that. So be sure to save often. Also, a tip, our system works the best on the Google Chrome browser. It is not as friendly to some of the other ones like Safari and Foxfire. It does work on Internet Explorer, but we have found that folks have far fewer problems if they use Google Chrome. So that's one of the first tips to try. And then last but not least, the attachment section. You can choose a file. So if you have that document as a Word or a PDF document or Excel, you can choose that file and upload it, and it will attach there. As I mentioned before, we have slots for other, so you can feel free to add other attachments. Just be sure that the document name tells kind of what that attachment is, so we can be able to look at that and know what the attachment includes. But as I mentioned before, we're looking for your project team, the work plan, your budget and match documentation, maps and photographs, and then any other document you would like to submit to us. Any questions? Before we get to questions, Rebecca, I'm going to pull.
So many questions.
Okay, before we get to the questions though, Rebecca, so that we have time to get to our other announcements while we have a captive audience, I'm going to kick it back over to you really quick, Rebecca, to go over the announcements and then contact information. Then we'll circle back to questions if that's okay.
Okay, so very briefly, because I know we do have some questions piling up, our news and announcements, the Community Business Launch Program. The grant deadline there is July 16th, and we have an additional $500,000 in that program this year as well, which is one reason that we pushed that deadline back. So there is one question from Ashley: would a business pitch competition be included as business support, entrepreneur support? It would, but our strong preference would be that you apply for the Community Business Launch Program rather than this fund, because that is very specific what that but again, talk to us and we can have those conversations. The industrial revitalization is July 31st, and that is for the rehab or reuse of white elephant type buildings that are derelict and are creating blight in the community, and will be rehabbed for a primarily commercial purpose. They can be mixed use, but it needs to be a minimum of 30% commercial, and there needs to be a business use already identified and a pro forma in place. The more shovel ready the project is, the more competitive it is for those dollars. Also, reminding everyone of our Creating Community Vitality series that we have been doing in calendar year 2021, helping communities think about the work from home revolution and the remote work revolution, what that means for your community, attracting, retaining workforce. And last but definitely not least, haven't heard, the National Main Street Conference will be in Richmond, Virginia, May 16th through the 18th. And even though it will be in Richmond, it really is a celebration of Virginia. And we will be highlighting Main Street communities and innovations and great works from around the state, as well as visiting some communities. In being a part of that, please let us know. There is our contact information. And now we're going to get into some of these questions. So Joy is a little hampered when she is sharing her screen. She can't see the questions. So I'm going to jump back. Yes, that will be made available. Any flavor of nonprofit must be a 501c3. No. Not could be a C6. I know there was a question further down regarding merchants associations, retail associations. Yes, those are eligible entities to apply for these funds as well. Are allocated, again, that would be with the governor's announcement after all of those awards are made. We talked about the match, we talked about adult daycare, hotel, child care. Thank you for posting the grant manual, Kyle. Frank K, I did see your question further down. We'll quantify those terms in 1 second. So this is for organizations that distribute funds to others. Essentially, yes. The funds will be used to support small business activities. So that can be technical assistance that the Chamber of Commerce then undergoes in supporting the small businesses, training that they're doing, in-kind services that they're providing to the small businesses, or it could be direct grants or loans to those businesses. Would this apply to farmers markets? Potentially to farmers markets, depending on the activities. And again, if you are a nonprofit, is this available to new nonprofits as I am setting up my nonprofit now? To Joy's direction regarding the application itself, we will have questions around the capacity of your organization. So if you are a new organization just getting started, technically yes, you are eligible to apply, but note that this is $1 million for the entire state. So it is possible, if not probable, that a nonprofit that doesn't have a track record of success built up yet would not score very well on the capacity and readiness portion for these funds. Can ARPA be used as a match? Anything and everything pretty much can be used as a match for these funds. Can the organizational capacity help fund a Main Street director? And we talked about that. Joy, do you want to the administration portion, what they can ask for in terms of administration?
Yeah, so that is 10%. So of a $100,000 proposed $100,000 project, you can take up to 10% for grant administration. So that could help support a staff member that is doing the grant administration and implementing the project and things like that. However, if you only apply for $75,000, then it would be obviously 10% of that, which would be $7,500. So we are allowing under that business support service for 10% to be utilized for grant administration.
Would a CVB/DMO be eligible to support tourism businesses? Yes, and I know there's a question further down regarding is there a list of historically economically disadvantaged communities? So the answer to that is no. We're not necessarily talking about geographies when we talk about communities. These might be a business sector that has historically been underserved. It might be a demography, so it might be very specific. Women born in 1977 who only attended state schools. That might be a community within your community that you, the CVB or the Main Street organization or the PDC, would want to build up a fund to support, again, women born in 1977 who only ever attended state schools. If that is your target demographic, let us know that in the application. And then, you know, right here, I'll apply for those funds maybe. So tourism businesses, yes, we definitely know that tourism businesses were disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. So this is coming from Discover Bristol. If Bristol put in an application saying that they were going to create a grant fund or a loan fund or potentially even matching the funds that Governor Northam recently announced in terms of signing bonuses for hiring staff, if that is something that you wanted to make available to your tourism businesses, these funds could be partnered with those funds, tourism businesses in that way. Heather Lynn, thank you so much for expanding on the match question there. Sawmills and forestry be included in this grant?
There is probably a VDAX grant available for you, which is the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services. So reach out to that department if you have questions around the ag industry or forestry industry, because they do have funding available for small businesses around that.
Thank you. Monetary percentage of the match that needs to be true dollars. I think we did address that. We don't have anything hard and fast. I will say that keep in mind, again, that this is going to be a very competitive applicant, the resources available. So what is required and what scores the best and makes a competitive application may be different things. If I am a woman-owned business, how can we take advantage of this? So again, we mentioned at the top a few times that this is available to individual businesses or individual business owners or individual entrepreneurs or so on. if you are a woman-owned business in, let's say, Allegheny County, and Allegheny County has decided that they are going to apply for these funds, again, to support women-owned businesses, then you could apply to whoever the grantee is with Allegheny County for some small business support or whatever their program looks like. But this is not a fund that is going to. Yes, we will be sending this presentation out to all attendees as a recording of the presentation online, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at the program manual, which is on the website. This is essentially just the movie, and the manual is the book. Nonprofit, like a retail alliance, yes. Map list of historically economically disadvantaged communities that are eligible. So, you know, there again, we don't have a specific list. We don't have a specific map. You would want to let us know who your target demography is, or geography, or business sector, and let us know why they are the historically economically disadvantaged community that you are targeting with your program design. So Frank, I hope that answers your question as well. And then, yeah, the disproportionately impacted, you know, again, think about what we talked about in terms of program priorities and goals, and that was in the budget amendment that gave us these funds. So we are looking at businesses, business sectors, business districts that have been impacted, and these are funds that are going to business districts. So not, again, to individual businesses, but to business districts to help them create a resilient small business ecosystem in their community. And yes, that is up to the applicant to quantify. You know, if you pull data and show us in our county, these are the businesses that we lost the most of, or this, and therefore this is how we are designing a program, then that's great information. And of course, the Joy mentioned at the top of the presentation as well. SWAM certified business, are we the type of business that would qualify? Program is not direct to businesses. This is to units of local government and adding support to small businesses. If you want to jump in on any. Can multiple programs be funded in one application? Say our town has 3 assistance programs and we divide up grant money to fund all 3 to build our ecosystem. Yes, just put that in the budget that, you know, we're doing a third, or a quarter, half, however that's breaking down for you. A list of participants being made available. Joy, will we be making a list of participants available?
Had not planned on that, but if that is something folks want, we can definitely share that along with the links to the presentation after it's recorded. We can certainly do that. Or if you want to email us directly, we can get just the list just to you in case that is not of interest to everyone.
Correct. So I have a few questions here in terms of when a program or a project can be launched, in terms of when the funds are made available. Towards recently completed projects, or towards projects that are in process and will be completed before June. I'm going to let you answer that. There's kind of a whole series of questions in terms of the timeline with projects.
So we'll be entering a memorandum of understanding with you based on the timeline that you present to us as well. Because these are state funds, they are a fiscal year. So we do have to make sure the project is wrapped up by June of 2022, because those funds won't be available to us after that point. They will be recaptured. So we do need to make sure that the project is completed by June 2022, or that your last remittance to complete the final portion of your project is submitted before then. So we will work with those that are awarded funds to develop a contract, a memorandum of understanding, as we call it, an MOU, a contract. So that will be individually based on your project, and those timelines will be established based on what you give us as part of the implementation schedule that you've provided to us in your work plan.
And Joy, if applicant applies for both categories, does that need to be two projects, 50,000 and 100,000, or is it better if it is one project, 150,000? And also, if you want to say, can they do that in one application, or do they need to have two separate applications?
I would imagine if the projects relate, they would definitely want to be together, but you're going to have, I think that we would have a question if you apply for two different projects with the same organization, because we're going to ask, where's your priority? So if you are building your capacity at the same time implementing some business support services, those do go together. If they're two completely separate projects, it'd probably be best to put your best one forward, because it is, as Rebecca mentioned, going to be a competitive program. We do have limited resources. So I would say that it would be better to put one project together at the $150,000 level. Now remember that 150 also has to be matched 5-to-1. So we're going to be looking for the same match amounts regardless of how much you apply for.
And so the best answer to some of these questions is contact us and let staff walk you through the best way to present the project or program that you are looking to fund.
Yeah, and
and Frank K are all making fun of CAMs. So Joy, go ahead and dock them all 5 points ahead of time just for being sassy. Just kidding.
One thing that I will say is, in addition to the presentation, there are a couple of times it's been posted in the chat, the link to the grant guidelines. Be sure to read through those first, and then that'll give you a better overall understanding of everything that we're asking for, the information that we're asking for. It might also seed some ideas for the type of project that your community can undertake, or who your partners might be as part of the project. And our contact information, the generic contact information, is in that document as well, and we'll be sure to follow back up with you.
Question from Lynchburg regarding some definitions. So I think we've kind of covered a lot of this. If you still have questions, again, be in touch with us. But, you know, I'll say again, we have definitely seen a lot of data and heard a number of times that tourism businesses, businesses that are owned by women or people of color were also disproportionately impacted, not have the same capacity or ability to get some of the funds that have previously been made available. So again, it's a little bit up to you to define to us who in your community has been disproportionately impacted or served, and then, you know, put a program together to serve that community and let us know how you plan to do that. Again, any questions? You know, feel free to be in touch with staff and we'll go over that. Can these dollars be used to match the community business launch? So we've gotten this question before. The answer is yes. Technically, yes, they can be used to match one another. However, you will not know whether or not you have received the community business launch funds or the Resurgence funds in time to truly commit them to being the match for one another. So if you are awarded CBL but not Resurgence, and the Resurgence funds are what you are counting on to match CBL, then the math doesn't work out. You don't actually have the CBL match. So you need to have a backup for those matches, so that if you do not get one or the other source of funds, that you can still qualify for the. I hope that makes sense. I hope I said that correctly. I will also say that for real maximum impact around the state, between $6.68 million, we want to leverage allocate these funds in such a way that we have strong impacts around the state. So I'll just leave that there. Does the project have to support businesses located in Virginia only? Yes, because we are looking for, again, a business district. So you are going to put a geography on some boundaries on where these funds are going to be utilized. Can we put the contact info back up? When we send the presentation out, the contact info will be there. And of course, the email address that sends you the information, you can also respond to that, and we will get back in touch with you. Can we apply an investment grant? Yes, absolutely. If the downtown investment grants have not been announced yet, however, you cannot necessarily use that as a match for this, but fingers crossed they will be announced by then. Okay, to use the grant if you are a tutoring and training center. That does not sound like it would meet the program priorities and goals. So again, you may be able to technically qualify and apply for these funds, but that would not make the most competitive application. And if I don't have past performance because I have a new business, is this grant available in the future? So in terms of being a new business to individual businesses, currently this fund is a one-time allocation and is in response to the COVID pandemic. So we cannot in any way guarantee that these funds would be available again. So do think of it at this point as a one-time. So essentially, it is our job to define a historically underserved community. If you as a community are saying we want to make these funds available to X, Y, and Z, let us know why that community is the one that is historically underserved within your larger community or within your business district. So an underserved community might be Lynchburg than it is in Fairfax. So that may be something that varies a little bit from place to place. And again, an historically underserved community could be a demography. So it could be women. It could be that you want to serve only businesses owned by immigrants, and you could tell us that that is an underserved community. So it really is for you to let us know what community you want to use these funds to serve within your broader community. If your target sector was, say, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, it could be statewide, hypothetically. Because district grant fund, that kind of project might not be the most applicable to these funds. If you are a community that has a military base, maybe Blackstone or Petersburg have military bases nearby, and you wanted to really encourage disabled veteran-owned businesses within that district, that puts more of a geography on it, and that is something that be in touch with with staff, and we are happy to talk through all of this, because I know this is a very, very flexible pot of funds. It was designed that way because we really feel like the decisions are utilized and exactly who these funds go to is best made at the hyper local level. So that is why it has been left very open, but it's going to make applications more competitive than some other applications. And so again, we are happy to talk through all of this with you, and I really encourage you to be in touch with staff. Downtown Lynchburg, just making sure I understand that component 100%. We want everyone to understand how very murky this actually is. A link to the manual. Thank you again, Kyle Meyer, for dropping that in. What is my email address? Let's see. So I think in the manual that Kyle dropped in, there are some email addresses to the is that, and we can drop our addresses into the chat box here as well.
And Rebecca, I put the CRO at DHCD in there. That's the best address to get any and all of us, because multiple folks are checking that email. So CRO at dhcd.virginia.gov is a good email address that we're all going to be monitoring.
Yeah, so that really ensures that, over the next several weeks before the application deadline, if Joy is on vacation, if Rebecca's on vacation, if Courtney's on vacation, or if one of us wins the lottery and never comes back, we don't want your email just sitting around in one person's inbox. We really want it in that, everyone's eyes can be on it.
Last question, Rebecca, I think, and then we'll have to take everything else just to be mindful of everyone's time. It says projects must be complete, but can they start prior to award? That's at your own risk. You would be working outside of a contract. You wouldn't have awarded funds. Really, it would be preferred that your projects start when funds are awarded, but we understand some of these might be expanded programs of existing elements to expand. You would just need to let us know that, but you would be taking a risk of starting a project before getting awards. So I wouldn't recommend that, but certainly we can work with you individually on your start time.
And Joy is absolutely right. We are well past our time at this point. We really appreciate everyone's time and attention. And William Mitchell, I really appreciate getting to watch you screen print some t-shirts there. What a great example of small scale production happening here in Virginia. Thank you again, everyone. And feel free to contact us to set up meetings to discuss your projects, and we will be posting the slides and the presentation online. Thank you. End recording.